You know that feeling, right? That moment of pure panic when you find water somewhere it should not be? Well, it turns out the difference between a simple cleanup and a total wallet draining catastrophe all comes down to what happens in the first few hours. So today, we're going to deconstruct the whole process, the speed, the science, and the strategy of professional water damage restoration.
So, what is it? What's that tipping point that takes a small leak and turns it into an absolute disaster that destroys walls, floors, and everything in between? Well, it almost always comes down to one thing: time. See, water doesn't just sit there, it spreads, it soaks in, and it kicks off this destructive chain reaction. The only way to stop it is with a super fast and, even more importantly, a correct response. To really get a grip on this threat, let's zoom in on a real-world example, a place called Waggaman, Louisiana. This community is basically ground zero for what you could call a perfect storm of water damage risks. The environment itself creates this constant, relentless threat all year long. Okay, so look at these factors. Any one of them is bad news, but when you pile them all together, that's when it gets really dicey. The low elevation means stormwater has nowhere to drain. That clay soil, it acts like a giant sponge, holding moisture and literally pushing it against home foundations. And with summer humidity hitting 90%, any water that does get inside has no chance to dry out on its own. It just sits there, waiting to become a breeding ground for mold. Now, when the pros show up to a job, they're not just seeing a puddle on the floor. No way. They're looking at it like a doctor diagnosing a patient, because they know a crucial fact: not all water is created equal. They see different categories of threat, and each one demands a totally different battle plan. This is the official system the pros use, straight from the IICRC, the organization that sets the standards for the industry. Category 1 is clean water, like from a busted water supply line. Category 2 is gray water. It's got some gunk in it. Think a dishwasher overflow. But then you have Category 3, black water. This is the bad stuff: sewage, floodwater from a river, and it is dangerously contaminated. You absolutely cannot treat a Cat 3 problem the same way you'd handle a Cat 1 leak. It's a serious health hazard. All right, let's talk about where this water comes from. First up, a classic and a total nightmare: burst pipes. We're talking about plumbing systems that have been sitting in your walls for decades, slowly corroding, until one day, boom, they fail without any warning. It can pour hundreds of gallons into your house before you can even figure out where the main shutoff valve is. And then, of course, you've got storms. A heavy, driving rain is like a stress test for your house, and it is an expert at finding every single weak spot: a loose shingle, a bad seal around a window. But here's the sneaky part: the water doesn't just drip on your head. It finds its way inside your walls, silently soaking your insulation and framing. And you might not know anything is wrong until you see a nasty stain blooming on the ceiling weeks later. Hey, remember that clay soil from Waggaman? Well, as it gets wet and dries out, it expands and shrinks, and that movement puts immense pressure on a home's foundation, causing cracks. This creates a perfect pathway for groundwater to get in. It's pushed inside by something called hydrostatic pressure, which is literally just the immense weight of all that saturated ground squeezing water right through the concrete. And then there's the one nobody wants to think about: sewage backups. Sometimes when there's a massive downpour, the city's sewer system just can't handle the volume. The whole system gets overwhelmed and the flow reverses, pushing that nasty, contaminated Category 3 water back up into your home through floor drains, toilets, you name it. It's the most serious kind of water intrusion for sure. So with all those scary possibilities, you can probably see why the response has to be incredibly fast. It is a literal race against time. From the moment that call for help is made, the single most important window of opportunity is that very first hour. And get this is the magic number pros live by: 60 minutes. And let's be clear, that's not 60 minutes to get a call back or to schedule an estimate for next Tuesday. That's 60 minutes max for a fully equipped crew to be on your doorstep, ready to start pulling water out of your house right now. And if you're wondering why that 60-minute window is so non-negotiable, well, take a look at this. In that first hour, water is already wicking up the drywall like a candle wick, and it's seeping deep into the subfloor. Give it 24 hours, and in the right conditions, mold spores can start to activate and grow. And by the 48-hour mark, the wood studs in your walls and your floor joists are swelling and warping. The damage just gets exponentially worse with every single hour that ticks by. So how do the pros actually reverse this damage? How do they turn back the tide on this mess? Well, it's not just a bunch of people running around with mops and buckets. It's a precise, methodical, three-phase process. It's a roadmap designed for one thing, to get a property back to the way it was before the disaster ever happened. And it all boils down to these three main steps. 1. Emergency water removal. Get the liquid water out and get it out fast. 2. Structural drying and dehumidification. This is where you go after all the hidden moisture. And 3. Restoration and reconstruction. That's rebuilding and repairing anything that couldn't be saved. Phase 1 is all about speed and power. These aren't your average shop vacs. We're talking about powerful, truck-mounted pumps that can pull out thousands of gallons of water per hour. They'll also use smaller, portable units for things like carpets. And anything that's completely soaked and can't be saved, like carpet padding, gets torn out immediately. The goal here is simple. Stop the water from spreading any further. Period. Now, once all the standing water is gone, you might think the worst is over. But honestly, this is where the real science begins. This isn't just about setting up a few fans and calling it a day. Technicians place industrial-strength dehumidifiers and high-velocity air movers in a very specific pattern to create the perfect drying environment. And they come back every single day with moisture meters to check their progress and make adjustments. That equipment doesn't leave until the data proves the structure is completely dry, which usually takes about 3 to 5 days. And that brings us to the hidden science of drying. Because it's way more than just blowing air around. It's about taking control of the atmosphere inside the building to literally pull the moisture out of the materials as quickly and efficiently as possible. There's actually a name for this science. It's called psychrometry. Fancy word, right? But what it really means is understanding the relationship between air, temperature, and moisture. See, the pros use this knowledge to create a perfect balancing act. They manipulate the temperature and humidity to get moisture to evaporate, and then use controlled airflow to carry that moisture away. It's a delicate dance to get things dry fast without causing any new problems. So that leads to the big question, right? If you can't see the moisture that's trapped deep inside a wall or underneath a hardwood floor, how on earth do you know when it's actually gone? Just touching it and saying, "feels dry," is not going to cut it. And this right here, this is probably the single biggest difference between a pro job and a DIY attempt that leads to a huge mold problem later. Professionals do not guess. They use sophisticated moisture meters to get precise numerical readings of the water content inside materials. They even take a baseline reading from a totally dry part of the house to establish a target, a dry standard. And they don't stop the drying process until the wet areas meet that standard. It's all data-driven and it's all documented, which is exactly what insurance companies need to see. So, after walking through this whole race against time, after seeing how water expertly finds every single vulnerability, from an old pipe to a tiny crack in the foundation, it all comes back to a crucial final thought. Every single home has its own unique risks, its own set of weak spots. The real question is, do you know where yours are?